Fala aí, cabeçada, beleza? Aqui é o Guilherme Santos, comigo tá aqui o Natan Prado e o Zarzas. Então, a gente acabou de terminar uma entrevista com o Vincente Disanti. Pra galera que curte o nosso canal há um certo tempo, o Vincente Disanti, ele é o diretor e o criador da franquia assim, de filmes feitos por fã, né? Que vamos colocar assim. O Never Hike Alone, o Never Hike in the Snow e o Never Hike Alone 2, que vai sair no nosso canal ainda esse ano. Então, a gente teve uma entrevista muito bacana. A Ubisoft Film, que é a produtora dele, a gente vem trabalhando com eles aí, acho que desde 2021, por aí mais ou menos. É uma conversa bacana, ele vai explicar detalhes sobre a produção, ele vai explicar detalhes de como foi o processo criativo, um pouco da história dele. Espero aí que vocês aproveitem a entrevista. É uma entrevista bem longa, considerando a última entrevista que a gente fez com o Zachary Truman, que é o diretor do filme, mas eu acho aí que vocês vão gostar bastante. Vincent, for start, you can say your name and how long you've been on this kind of industry.
Yeah, no, my name is Vincent Disanti. I'm a director, writer, producer, founder of Womp Stomp Films. I've been working in the film industry for about 17 years. I got my start in Los Angeles in 2008 and have been working in the industry ever since.
Wow. Again, it's a pleasure to have you here. We on the Quartel Convention, we are very proud of being working with you for the past years. I think we are being working together for, I think, the past, 2 years?
Yeah, I think even longer than that. I mean, you came in and did,
Yeah, we started with Never Hike the Snow, and then we produced the Never Hike Alone, and now we're just finishing up on the last touches for the Never Hike Alone 2. I hope we can, continue working together, moving forward on your next projects.
No, I mean, it's been really amazing to see the work that you've done. When you reached out, it seemed almost like too good to be true that you guys were going to work on this for us and bring, the Never Hike Alone franchise to Brazil and be able to translate it and do all of that stuff. And it was like, for me, it was cool to see this project that I had started literally in my backyard. You know what I mean? Like I was kind of working it and kind of working out the pieces to it, growing it over a few years. And then, the way that it ended up releasing and hitting audiences. And now I get to watch a version of it that's, completely translated. And to hear other actors performing, for the actors doing the dubs, it's like wild to be like, oh my God, this is reaching people all over the place. And this is so cool. And I think as a filmmaker, it's really rewarding. Like, I think, seeing when they say like, what you think about success, like for me, the success is that people are seeking it out, that that you guys liked it so much that you wanted to make it more accessible for other people. And now you have, and now our fan base grows, and now more people can enjoy it. And that's not easy when you're making an independent film, off crowdfunding money, you know what I mean? And a lot of projects like this never have this opportunity. So I really have to say thank you guys for putting in all this hard work, doing excellent work. And yes, we were happy to help. I know that I got to send a shout out to my editor, Mike Appy, who's really the person who sends you all the materials that you need. I remember watching Never Hike in the Snow for the first time and like just being blown away, being like, wow, this is actually like, you guys did a great work, like, first of all, but it's just like, and now seeing it in another language, it was just like, wow, these are our words, like going there, everybody, it's really great. I feel like you definitely have done injustice and amplified it. I think it's really, really cool.
I must say it's because like this, there was a match making heaven, because at the same time we enjoy very much your point of view on the Friday the 13th franchise. A huge part of our crew loves the franchise itself. And when we were watching it, we're just making the comparisons like, oh yeah, we got this reference from the old movies, but at the same time is something completely new, is something with a lot more depth, structure you actually long for. Instead of the old movies that everyone was like a piece of shit and you just want to just kill everyone off. And everyone gonna be watching this, and in the name of our director Lucas, he's is the main guy behind the choice for the voice actors, everything, the directions. So, in name of him, he say thank you.
Okay.
It's been a pleasure again. It's been great. You guys are being treating us like family almost. So,
well, yeah, send my thanks right back to him because he's doing great work, and yeah, happy to have him on board. You know, helping Never Hike Alone shelter into a whole nother fan base.
We're gonna start with the first question, and that's gonna take over for now.
All right. So to begin with, Vincent, when did your passion for cinema begin, and what drove you to work on a Friday the 13th film?
You know, I grew up like most people, like movies were big events. And I loved going to the movies. I loved stories. I loved animated films. One day I was at work with my grandfather, and he worked at a nursing home. And there was a nurse who had this box of VHS tapes, and she had like Little Shop of Horrors and War of the Gargantuans and Godzilla versus Megalon and like all these like monster movies. So I really got into like Godzilla and Little Shop of Horrors and monster movies early on, and I thought that they were so cool, and like the monsters were really cool looking. When I was old enough to go with my parents to the video store, the middle aisle was the horror aisle, and it was sort of like the easiest aisle to walk down to get to all like the new movies. And I remember walking down that aisle and looking to my left and looking to my right and seeing like Friday the 13th, Nightmare on Elm Street, Halloween, Texas Chainsaw Man, and like these just amazing covers, like chainsaws and machetes and the claw and all that stuff. And I was like, what is this stuff? And, you know, wanting to rent it. And at the time, like my mom read Stephen King, my dad liked horror movies. And so they usually ended up renting one for themselves. And I would rent, you know, the latest like Die Hard or, you know, whatever thing was kind of popular at the time. But I'd always want to watch what they were watching because those movies looked so cool, what was in them. Once I did like get a taste of Friday the 13th, I was hooked right away. I loved the hockey mask. I loved the look. Like I loved all the covers. And there were so many of them. I was like, oh my God, this movie's, if there's this many, they've got to be good. And this is when there was only 7 of them. You know, I remember the ads for Part 8. I remember the ads for Jason Goes to Hell. I remember being in high school and seeing Jason X. I remember Freddy vs. Jason 2009. And through the years, I really grew as a fan with the franchise. Like my favorite number was 13. I wore 13 in my sports. You know, I have a Friday the 13th tattoo, and I just became obsessed with these movies. I would love watching them on a Friday night. I had all the VHS tapes, and I would always pick one out and kind of watch it. You know, that carried with me as just far as like, you know, one day I just wanted to, you know, when I realized, you know, actually when I was early on in my childhood, I wanted to play professional sports. I wanted to play professional baseball. And when I was in college, I realized that I probably wasn't gonna, I might have been able to play like some minor league, but I probably wasn't going to go pro. And I was hearing a lot of horror stories. And at the same time, I was in school studying journalism and TV production. And I fell in love with filmmaking, and I fell in love with the process. And I realized this is really what I want to do with my life. I've been such a film nerd my entire life. Like it's actually, I spend more time talking about films than I do talking about baseball. So maybe I should see what film life would be like. When I moved to LA, I thought one day maybe if I worked hard enough, I could work on a Friday the 13th film. Like how cool would it be to be on set on a Jason movie? This would be the best. And I had sort of just missed the cusp when they were doing the 2009 film. And, you know, I sort of saw that movie and I had mixed feelings about it. And I started thinking about like, what would I want to see in a Friday the 13th film? And at the same time, I started working in development. I started writing more. I started creating a lot of my own stories. And so I would write down these Friday the 13th like outlines of like, oh, you know, it'd be a cool Friday the 13th movie, this or that. And I wrote down all these ideas over the years. And as I climbed up in the ranks of filmmaking and I started making more money, I had some expendable cash to go build my first ever like real cosplay. I didn't want to just build a costume. I wanted to build like a really cool cosplay. So I started putting together, you know, this Part 3 costume that really wasn't that great. You know, I had like this latex hood I got off of eBay that barely fit me, and you know, I got the Dickie shirt and I muffed it all up and got it all ready, and we tried to make a version of that. Like, and I was like, oh, we'll take some photos, you know, we'll do some videos, and some of it, like the photos came out good, the videos came out not so great. And that's when I was like, you know, if you're gonna do something, you can't just copy the past. You can't just you can't just take a rubber stamp and go, okay, part 3, bing. Because even if I try to tell a story with the part 3 Jason in it, that doesn't make any sense, because in the timeline, he was only really technically in that version for 24 hours. So there's that version, and there's the final cut version, or the final chapter version, and then there's Jason Lives. And I'm like, I don't know, what do I want to do? What do I want to build? And all that stuff looks like really expensive to really go to like the Jason Lives level. And I started scouring the internet, and I started putting together what eventually became the Ghost Jason look. And so as I was doing that, I had sort of met with some friends, and I had this idea, and the Never Hike Alone idea was something that I had written down about a hiker going into the woods, discovering Jason and seeing if he could get out. And we started putting all those pieces together, and it really started as like a 5-minute exercise that we were going to do as like a trailer to see if there was any traction for it. And so it was me, this guy, Chris Thellis, Kyle Klein, Andrew Lady, John Cabrera, and JD Marks. And so the 6 of us got together, you know, almost every other weekend and started messing around with some stuff, messing around with drones, messing around with cameras. And we came up with the trailer that we released in 2016 in May. Once we put that together, it kind of all made sense that we could do something interesting for about 5 to 10 minutes. And then right after the trailer, that's when we discovered that abandoned camp. And so once we saw the abandoned camp and we had the original premise, and we realized that we had all these additional sets and all these different things that we could do, that we could go inside the buildings and actually create stuff, that if we actually slowed down and did this piece at a time and really put some effort into it, that we might be able to do something that no one else has done before. And that's create a Friday the 13th fan film that looks like a real film. And so at that point, that's when I was sort of like, you know, and if you think about what's going on in the background in the real world, like Friday the 13th is stumbling all over the place. They're not getting films up. I can't seem to break through the mold to like get on one of the films. So I realized that like maybe I should stop asking the world to give me something, and maybe I should create this opportunity for myself. And that was sort of like a mixture of all that kind of coming together. My love for it, the fact that I spent the first 8 years in my career in development and writing and working on animated films and helping them come to life, and part of the story teams and all of that stuff. So I started to really develop my storytelling skills, and Never Hike Alone was like and exercising, flexing everything that I had learned in my first 8 years in the industry, and then trying to put that on screen, because I was frustrated in my own career because I was working in production and I wasn't getting a lot of recognition for the creative contributions that I was doing, and I wasn't getting any opportunities to go full-time creative. So again, I was waiting, like in both instances with Friday the 13th and with, you know, my creative career, I was hoping that if I worked hard enough, someone would open a door and allow me to step through the creative. And what I realized is that I wasn't going to do that unless I created and opened the door myself. You got to kick them down. And that's what Never Hike Alone really was for me. It was kicking down the door and saying, I want to work on Friday the 13th. I know how to tell story, and I want to be a director. And that was my message to the world, and it changed my life.
So that's when you created a Kickstarter project. Is that right?
Yeah, along the way, we created a couple of them. Like we did the first trailer, and we used that as a way to launch the first Kickstarter. Actually didn't take. We tried to raise $40,000 and we only got to 29, and we didn't get the money. Some of those backers ended up raising about $20,000 for us outside of Kickstarter. And so we took that 20 grand and made the first half of Never Hike Alone. And then we came back to Kickstarter many months later with a new trailer, raised another 20 grand, and then finished the film. And I probably put about $10,000 of my own money into it as well. So all in all, Never Hike Alone was about a $50,000 project, which consisted a lot of getting our team up to the mountain, staying in cabins for the weekend, shooting at this remote camp, and then a few weekends where we had like full production trucks with 4K lights and stunt pads. I was actually just going through some behind the scenes footage this morning from the first movie and realizing like, I cannot believe we made this happen. Like, this is crazy. Like the fact that we pulled this off, I still look back on it and I'm amazed by it. But we were just so passionate about it. We just didn't let anything stop us. We just pushed through it all.
Vincent, you have plans to release the behind scenes?
Yeah, no, we do have a good set of behind the scenes on the YouTube right now. There's Never Hike Alone behind the scenes. There's Never Hike in the Snow behind the scenes. There is a work in progress of the Never Hike Alone 2 behind the scenes, but it didn't make the Blu-ray. It's actually still in process. But hopefully that will be released one day. I may just release like individual interviews on the YouTube channel because there's just too much to cut away from. And I think over the next, few months, you're going to see more behind the scenes from Never Hike Alone being posted to our social media sites, just photos and things like that. So if you're not following us on Womp Stomp Films, WOMPSTOMPFILMS on most platforms, then you're missing out because you're going to see a lot of the cool kind of making of and how we're able to make it all come together.
The TDBs of it, how like the funny stuff, how things came to be. That's amazing stuff to see. I don't know about you, but I love it too. When I finish watching a movie, like watching a trilogy and stuff, a really good one, just go to behind the scenes to see how it was for the actors, how it was for the director to make everything work out. Because you just see the finished product. You don't see the struggle. You don't see the funny stuff that happens between.
Not at all.
Yeah, that's amazing stuff. I do imagine like it's a really hard character to rework, because Jason is pretty much like it's not like Freddy Krueger. There he speaks and stuff. Jason is just like non-verbal. Most of the films they're pretty much non-verbal. Sometimes in some movies you can just hear a growl and that's it. For you, how was like to rework that classic character, and the biggest challenge you took like on that venture?
I mean, obviously, there's a lot of great actors that have come before you. There's different performances, there's different sizes, there's different shapes. I think at the end of the day, I think it really comes down to the costume. You have to start with the costume first, and if the costume doesn't look good, it's going to take away from the rest of the performance. Like, that's how I felt about Jason Goes to Hell. I love Kane Hodder's performances. In Part 7, it's one of, I think Part 8 is one of the most criminally underrated performances of his career. I don't think he gets enough credit for that movie. Jason Goes to Hell, you don't see a lot of them in what you do. I'm not a big fan of that suit, but he's still doing the same acting. He's still doing the same things, but he's kind of carrying the suit with him, and the suit accentuates what he's doing. So the first thing we had to do was come up with a look that looked good. And I think once we got the Ghost Jason Hawk in, once I had everything on me and we had it all balanced, like I finally got some like shirts to help kind of pad it out a little bit. Because I'm not like at the time I wasn't really that large. I was actually probably walking around at like 190 pounds when we first got started, because I had been training Muay Thai and like lost weight to get down to 190 or 185. And so it took me some time to get bulked back up. And so I put on some padding shirts, we got all that stuff there. And I think once we found that look, it was about sort of a combination of posturing. It was a combination of camera angle, and it was a combination of movement. And it was like, how is Jason going to move? And so what I tried to do was not try to do what other actors had done, because then I'd just be doing an impression. What I tried to do was make up in my mind how I thought Jason would operate, now almost 70 years into his time on Earth. About, here is this creature that has been shot, stabbed, burned, flushed out into the Hudson with toxic waste. He's been, decaying all of these years. That those things are going to restrict movement, and those things are going to make him move in very simple ways. And so to always just try to keep a certain pattern to that walk, and always kind of adhere to reality of like, he's not going to walk around and be flexible and do all that stuff. And then there's certain things that in movement just make characters feel less intimidating. So like when we're walking, because I shared the role with Brian, when we talked about like moving forward, we always talked about making sure that when we walk, we don't tilt, because this isn't strong. This isn't a strong character. Somebody who walks like this isn't there, but somebody who stays like very rigid and kind of it's strength. You know what I mean? Like always putting strength forward. And that even though he was this decaying monster, that he was still exorbiting this strength. And that's what we needed to put in the eye of the audience, because the audience needed to be afraid of Jason, and they couldn't be afraid of him if he was too goofy or he didn't seem intimidating. So all of our choices were about like what makes Jason iconic and what makes Jason intimidating. And if it wasn't doing either of those things, we would go back and do another take.
Yeah. The Never Hike Alone, when the first minutes when Jason is chasing
the hiker.
the hiker.
Yeah.
That thing, the first scene, him just pulling up the ball, you see he's pretty much struggling, but at the same time he have the strength, and we're just like, wow.
Yeah.
That's really rare to Jason actually use a ranged weapon. There's pretty much just go melee most of the time, and
Yeah.
seeing he actually using a bow and arrow for something was like incredible. And like you say, you see in the movement, he get the strength, but at the same time it looks like he's struggling to keep up, because the king is pretty much a walking corpse.
Yeah.
At the time.
What about the character development? Because in the original franchise, it's often known to have shallow characters. How did you approach to creating a more deeper characters with psychological tension? Like in the beginning of Never Hike Alone 2, we see a mental struggle of that guy that pushed Jason in the lake. How did you develop that?
Well, I mean, I think it all started with, in Never Hike Alone 1, we wanted to ground the world to make it feel like an actual urban legend, to make it feel like it was grounded truth, bring the supernatural and make it feel like it fits in our real world. I think that's one place when a horror film can do that, it's going to be very effective, because people aren't taken out of the movie feeling like, okay, this is a movie, this isn't the real world. Like real people wouldn't do this type stuff. And Never Hike Alone was really just sort of a going back and trying to at first bring Friday the 13th back to basics. It's like we've heard so many stories about, what Jason is and who Jason is and what the backstory was and all of these different things. But I thought that one of the things that we did really well in the first movie was take it back to the campfire legend and tell a good campfire tale. And once Andrew tells his campfire tale, it sort of brings everyone back to the same page. I'm like, all right, let's get back to the basics. Many years ago, a boy drowned, a mother came back and killed people at this camp, and life after that has never been the same. And so you can believe whatever you want happened after that, but we know that that is true. And I think that was a way to sort of establish it. When we had Tom Matthews make his cameo in the first movie, it unintentionally opened up this Pandora's box of us now being able to tinker with timeline of Tommy Jarvis. And so in order to put Tommy in the front seat of that ambulance, I had to, as a fan, justify, how did Tommy get there? And I wasn't going to put him in that front seat unless I had a good reason, because I didn't want to rip fans off. I didn't want to put Tom Matthews in a place that didn't feel like Tommy couldn't be there. And I didn't want it to feel like unrealistic. And even though at first, like him being a paramedic seems off, when you actually put the pieces together like I did, or you kind of see how it all came together, Tommy put Jason in the grave in part 6. In part 7, it's, I believe, 6 years later. So he put Jason in the ground in 1990. It's 7 years later, 1997. Tina comes back, brings Jason back, and, accidentally kills her dad and all that stuff. And then Jason drowns, and he shows up at the blown up house, and, he can't do anything about it. But who's on the other side of the police tape? There's paramedics, there's firefighters, there's police officers, there's Rick. And so Rick's not going to let him cross this line unless he's wearing one of those uniforms. So he trains and becomes a paramedic. Okay, now he's trained to become a paramedic. He's ready for the next time Jason comes back. Jason catches a boat ride to New York. So now he's out of his jurisdiction. And then eventually at some point, Jason comes back. People start going missing. The police never were able to find him. Tommy's never been able to find him. And Jason sort of like, at the end of Disappear and at the end of Never Hike in the Snow, was to establish that this is how Jason gets away with what he gets away with. The fact that, he gets somebody before they're able to get to other people. He leaves no evidence that, they're around. You cannot find their bodies. When Tommy tries to investigate, the police hinder his investigations. When someone else tries to investigate, without somebody else there, they go missing, and it just starts to pile on the missing people, and nobody can explain what's going on. And kind of going in there. And that's what this character of Kyle kind of stumbled into. And so Tommy, just keeping his job as the paramedic, ends up being the person who is like, he wants to be there. He wants to be at the edge of the forest, pulling that person out that is going to survive. But after all this time, especially in Never Hike Alone, he's sort of like given up hope. Like he doesn't think anything, like, especially after the Mark Hill incident, he's sort of like, maybe I'm just crazy. And with Tommy, we dive into the psyche of him when we got to tell his story in Never Hike Alone 2, was that his life forever changed when he met Jason as a boy. And so in his dreams, he dreams of his younger self who's innocent and didn't know who Jason was, or, you know, got to actually live a life as a normal child. Like that was robbed of him because of Jason. And that's what that dream signifies, is the fact that any normal life that he intended to live as a child was robbed the moment that the events of the final chapter happened. Tommy believes that, you know, Jason's still out there, but when he goes down to the camp and searches around, he can't find him. He's searching for a fight that he can't find. And when he looks into the water, he sees a reflection of Jason watching over him. And that's sort of a representation of the curse lingering around him and keeping him on edge and keeping him trapped in this mental state, watching all these people around him, like, you know, Diana Hill, watching her suffer, watching her lose her son, and knowing that he's powerless to do anything about it. And pushes his rivalry with Rick because he feels like they both feel like they're doing the right thing. You know, and at the end of the movie, you see Tommy look back in the water and he sees the reflection of his younger self, to see that, like, he finally feels like he's done enough. Like he finally feels like, I've done it. I've put Jason back where he belongs. We did, like, I cut his head off. How could he come back now? But at the same time, like, this isn't my fight anymore. Like, I got to go live my life. And, you know, he's only got so many years left. So I think he feels a sense of accomplishment at the end of that movie that I think that for fans, I wanted to create this sort of, this was the ending I wanted to see instead of Jason Goes to Hell. I wanted to see Tommy ride off into the sunset. If we could have got Megan, that would have been great. We would have reunited them and that would have come together. And I think for Jason, we always talked about, like, how are you going to kill Jason? And this felt like the only definitive way that you could do it. But in the way that it happens, as he's destroying his mother's head and he sees his mother's spirit and she's calling him home and all these different things, I feel like at that point we have primed the audience to allow Jason's death to happen, versus like Jason Goes to Hell. Jason was like killed against our will. Like we were like forced down and like forced to watch him die right away, versus like we were sort of like, okay, Jason's ready to rest. And in Jason's story, we wanted to, you know, the fact that, like, he is this undead revenant. He isn't ever living, non-dying. Like he can't seem to pass on. And like it disappear was really about, like, no matter how many kids he kills, when is he going to feel fulfilled? When is he going to be reunited with his mom? When is his struggle going to be over? When is his curse going to end? And so the story of Never Hike Alone is all of these pieces coming together, which is Jason's longing for the curse to end, Tommy's longing for the curse to end, and Rick's longing, like all these people's longing for the curse to end, but they're all dealing with it in different ways. And it isn't until it all kind of circumvents after the events of Never Hike Alone that these events are set into motion and come to an inevitable conclusion. Now, we have since announced that we're open to doing a Never Hike Alone 3. And I think that, you know, in that sense, there's going to be a complete change in tone. There's going to, well, not tone, but there's going to be a complete change in sort of a new story that's going to be told. And I think Jason has sort of evolved a little bit. And there's a little bit more simplicity to him. But I think at the end, the true curse is that Jason can never die. But at the end of Never Hike Alone 2, it's not that he dies. It's that he's now ready to rest. He's at rest. And the way that moving forward it goes is Jason is at rest until he is not. And so if you disturb Jason, you will incur his wrath. And then once his wrath is incurred, he will return to the lake and go back to sleep. But if you incur it, he will never stop coming. So that's kind of like the cool little twist to it. Nice. And it's like, and I feel like that sort of takes it out of it having to deal with past characters and the past timeline. And now we're in a completely new timeline with new characters. It's not to say that like a Kyle cameo is obviously possible. A Tommy cameo is obviously possible, but these aren't characters who are actively involved in the story. Now we're handing it off to new storytellers, new stories and all that stuff. And I think that we have some ideas that will blow some people out of the water. Plus we have Ghost of Crystal Lake, which is another prequel So it ties into the Never Hike Alone universe. And there is The Ghost of Crystal Lake, which is a novella that I'm writing, which connects Jason Takes Manhattan to Disappear and Never Hike Alone and all of that stuff, which I'll be working on over the next like year or two.
And what about the ambulance paramedics? They change it between Never Hike Alone 1 and 2. What happened?
So that was kind of a simple one, where the fact that the actors weren't available. They had since gone on to different parts of their careers. They were in different parts of the country. They weren't going to be able to make those dates. So we ended up realizing that we had to recast from the ground up. And that's what we did. We brought in Ben and Lauren, and they did a fantastic job. And it also sort of meant that, you know, at one point we were just going to cut in the old scenes from the first Never Hike Alone and let that blend in, since it was going to be the same people. But since we didn't have the same people, it sort of forced our hand to go in and do a little bit more of the ambulance scene that we originally intended. But we thought it was kind of cool because, like, well, let's see the ambulance scene from the opposite side, kind of like they do in Back to the Future 2. Like, you see it from another perspective, the same scene. I thought that might be an interesting sort of take on it, and we ran with it, and I'm pretty happy with the way it came out.
Yeah, I must say it was a little. We were a little bit surprised because the cast would change a little bit, but just these two characters. We have some films that asked how the Never Hike, the 3 films, fit on the franchise. But you need to make like changes, like you gave Jarvis a more like compelling background, because you just know this dude or just hanging out with the kids, and you never know what actually happened with him, why he's so obsessed. How our director like to say is the Lovecraft theory. When you end up in contact with the supernatural, people tend to believe you went insane, but it's not the case. It's like he's very sane, but people realize it's so absurd. They think he's going on. They not believe he's real. Like, you take the sheriff Colon, for example. He's been on the same time as Jarvis, but he still not believe it. That's the things happen. That Jason is real until he finally realizes that this shit is for real. And it's like their reaction. I must say, their reaction from the Vincent Gustafaro was like, holy shit, it's for real. Jason is real. It's like you get that comedy, like that blend between being humorous and at the same time terrific. That's really nice. I must say that is really nice for a production like that. At the same time, we talked with Zachary on the previous interview. It's like horror and comedy, they walk side by side, but it's very hard to make both happen at the same time. And you put, let's take like Never Hike Alone 2. You take a serious scene like Jason is killing everyone in the hospital, and Rick just realize, okay, this shit is for real. This is happening. We gotta do something about it. And I must say that's the perfect blend. And it's like,
yeah, I tried to give everybody plans that fit their character, and just try to set up situations that would be fun for the audience like Jason coming in and taking out 3 cops at once, or just like, and coming in and just sort of like steamrolling everybody, right in that moment after this long, the middle of Never Hike Alone 2 is filled with a lot of story. And then it finally ends with this big eruption of violence. And then you get that one-on-one with Rick, and Rick having the realization that all these years that, I think Rick deep down realized that there was a chance that Tommy could have been telling the truth, because the facts are lining up more to what Tommy is saying than what Rick believes. But Rick just doesn't want to believe it because it's Tommy, and it takes him seeing it in person to make that change. And I think more than anything, he doesn't feel bad about Tommy. He feels bad about Diana. And I'm sure he feels bad about Mabry too. And that was one of the reasons why he had a nightmare sequence, because he's carrying around the guilt of the fact that he kept secrets from his old deputy, and that got the deputy killed. If he had told the deputy what was going on and why he needed to leave and all of that stuff, and he actually took all of that seriously, he could have saved his life, but he thought it was Tommy. But by arresting Tommy that night and letting his deputy go missing that night, giving Tommy the perfect alibi, it completely ruined his case.
And you said that you moved it to LA. I think you probably worked with Hollywoods, I guess.
Mm-hmm.
So what is the difference between working with Hollywood and producing a film with a little small crew, an indie crew?
Yeah, working on a professional production is, it's the difference between Major League Baseball and Little League on the Saturday afternoon. Honestly, like when you're on a big Hollywood production set, there are 40 trailers. There's tractor trailer trucks. Every department has a full tractor trailer truck or box truck filled front to back with everything they can ever need for a movie. Costumes. There's 50 extras just getting ready while you got 12 cast members on set. You got, the studio flying in notes and new pages, and it's a huge undertaking. I worked for the Rookie in Los Angeles, and we'd be shooting in downtown LA, and we'd have city streets shut down. We did stuff with helicopters, car chases, gun fights. We have huge, wire rigs of people getting dropped off overpasses. We had a helicopter on an overpass. We did helicopter launches off the top of a building. It's just sort of like whatever you can imagine. If you have the money, you can make it happen. In independent production, you don't have those types of resources. Instead of having 10 people per department, you may have 10 people doing the work of 20 departments. You know what I mean? You may have one person working 3 different departments. I was directing, first ADing, and set designing, while my cinematographer was going to do camera, but he's also working with the grip crew to set up the lights. And there's only 3 people there, and there's only 2 people for that, and there's 1 makeup artist. And so you sort of have to understand what your limitations are. You have to understand where the lines are drawn in the sand and where you cannot cross outside of, because you just don't have the ability to do it. And you figure out how to accomplish your story within that box. And that is the story of Never Hike Alone. But what happened is that when we got that, so then there's things like we found that abandoned camp. All of a sudden our box got a lot bigger, and we could do a lot of things that was just sweat equity. That wasn't like, when you're on a set, a Hollywood set, every second you're on set or doing work for that set, you're getting paid. On independent, it's a lot of thankless work. It's a lot of unpaid, a lot of volunteered time, a lot of sweat equity, where you have to put in that extra amount, because if you don't, the product is going to suffer, because there's just, realistically on paper, there's not enough to make it good. What makes a good independent film good is the work that's done outside of the budget, the work that is done outside of the monetary investments. It's the personal investments that are made. I would say that's the biggest thing. And I've worked on smaller productions like a Hallmark movie, some independent sort of features. And I would say that Never Hike Alone started as 5 friends going out into the forest with a camera and a small thing. But as it got built out, I would say the team got as big as a Hallmark movie. Our team, the Womp team, as we work right now, we're basically like a smaller Hallmark team worth of people out there creating stuff. And that's why, the crowdfunds have gotten much more expensive, because we're adding more people to set, and we're adding more collaborators and getting more things done. But as we've done that, the product has also gotten more and more, the production value has gone up significantly as well.
And regarding that limits, which scene was the most challenging to do?
Oh man, out of all the movies,
or you can choose from each movie.
No, I think that all the no trespassing scenes in the first movie were really challenging, because that required about 7 people to hike up a half mile up a huge steep hill in the hills of Malibu, hot climate, and we had so much daylight, and the daylight only looked good from a certain hour to a certain hour, and we had to try to shoot within those hours, and it was always a challenge. We always ran out of light. I think we had to go up there 4 or 5 times before we got it. So that scene was always super challenging to shoot. The original fight between Jason and Kyle, we had to do that twice. We did that once in the fall of 2016, and it was a mess. And then we came back in the spring of 2017 and we cleaned it up and we made it look so much. We learned from all of our mistakes and we sort of did that one. And that came together. And Never Hike in the Snow, we didn't have any snow. We drove up the mountain and there was no snow that night. And the next morning, a snowstorm started. And so I got a small amount of the crew up at 5 a.m. to go chase the first pass of the storm, to go shoot all the opening shots for Never Hike in the Snow. So all of those shots are happening within the same 2 or 3 hours of us driving around the area and just capturing different places for Cortland. And the first one we did was him running along the side of the lake. The shot flying through the forest and then coming down and seeing him going over the top. Those are the first 2 that we did. We shot a little bit over there, and then we went to the area where we were going to do the axe kill, brought him deep into the woods, and got ready to shoot the bow and arrow sequence and shot that out. Now it's like 6, 7 a.m. Everyone else is arriving to set. The snow stopped. We're getting ready. We're rehearsing sort of what we're going to do. And then all of a sudden you heard like the wind hit the trees. It was just like you heard it. We were like, what was that? And then the snow started coming and it was like, start rolling. And so we got everything out. We got everything set up. We started, we let a little bit of snow fall. It covered the ground. The ground was finally covered. And then we started rolling, and we had about 3 hours to get that entire bow and arrow sequence shot out. We got that done after the first storm, and everyone was so cooked, and we had to do other things on other sides of the camp that we wrapped that up. We had to come back the next day and finish it with the axe to the mouth part. The sun was out. It was melting all of the snow. We were racing against the melt. We were literally shoving snow out of the parking lot, hiding it under shaded parts of trees. And then once we got Cortland in position to run all the blood tubes and get the prosthetic on and all that stuff, we locked him into position. We covered the entire area with snow, and then we shot out that sequence until it melted. And then, and did that. And so those were the night scene where, Rick and Alan are having their discussion after they've just arrested Tommy. That was you can see it, that was in the middle of a storm. We were getting blasted with snow. It was so cold that night. The car wouldn't start. Rick's car wouldn't start. So we had to put the camera on my Jeep for the drive up. So the driving up, that's actually my Jeep. It's not Rick's truck. We pull up, we stop, and then when we cut, it's the truck that we pushed into position that's there that he gets out of and does the whole thing. So we had to do a whole rigmarole there. Never Hike Alone 2. The scene of Rick fighting in the hospital was a tough one. We actually screwed up the original head crush. We didn't quite get the effect that we wanted. We had to shoot that many months later in another area, shooting up at the sky. You can't tell that we did it in another place, but we had to redo that. But aside from that, every single and there were some moments where we were kind of cut for time, and I wish we would have had done more there. I wish I would have had done more there. But I would say that for the majority, Never Hike Alone 2 was very well thought out, and most of those nights went fairly smoothly with as far as being able to capture everything. And it was just a sheer amount of shots that we had to get, so it was just a lot of work.
Yeah, because you're limited by the weather. It's we live in a hot country. Brazil is a really hot tropical country. So I think none of us here actually never saw snow only on the fridge. So it gets to the point you see the shots, you see the snow. I was thinking you guys were on a place with a lot of snow already. And you actually needed to wait for actually start snowing to roll that one and actually go against the time because the snow was melting away.
And that whole area, it's called Big Bear, California. The year before they had we did a bunch of, what's it called? what's it called? Scout days. And when we went up, I mean, the snow was knee high everywhere we went. And after that, and I'm thinking, oh, we'll have plenty of snow. And then we came back the next year, and where there was this ton of snow, there was no snow. Like, it was literally one of the driest winters that they had in years. And then the year before we made Never Hike Alone 2, they had another monsoon snowfall, like so much snowfall that it impacted the weather of Never Hike Alone 2, and the fact that like we couldn't go up and film for 3 months because there was a weather advisory because they thought the whole mountain was going to come down in a mudslide. And so we like that, man, the weather out there was just crazy. It definitely held its challenges for us a ton.
Yeah, I think when we wrap up production for the dubbing on Never Hike Alone, and we're starting Never Hike Alone. You guys were busy with the filming for the Never Hike Alone 2 for the time. I must say, like, the aesthetic, the way of filming is highly polished. I must say that is very high polish. You have like some cinematic aspiration for like bringing this style you use on the film, and the pace is very characteristic. It's like tension, calm. You have like these building up moments. You have like the peak, there's the beginning, and get a little bit slower. You get to know the characters a little bit, and then you have another peak of a horror, and calms down again. What like you say, like a production you get inspired by to make the pacing?
I mean, I grew up watching a lot of Spielberg movies. I feel like I inherently tell story and look at cinema in that sort of language, like those peaks and those valleys. I see film is very musical, like it's very musical to me. When I come up with scenes, I'm often listening to music and almost following the music in a sense of like the build-ups and the way that things carry out and the way that things intertwine with one another. I become very self-aware of that in storytelling, and sort of, you know, even when you're telling a story to someone in person, knowing when to give in certain inflection, when to bring things down, when to bring things up, and kind of doing those things. I think that those become inherent in just storytelling in general. As far as look goes, you know, I feel like I don't study enough specific cinematographers to say like, oh, I go this way or I go that way. I think I see things that just inspire me in the moment. Like with you know, with Never Hike Alone, it was, you know, I was really big into The Martian, and I loved what Ridley Scott did with that film, and I love the way that he broke up the found footage narrative with the 3-part camera system, where he would be talking to one camera directly, there'd be other monitoring cameras looking at him, and then, you know, it would all kind of wrap right back into the narrative. And so I basically just took that formula, and I think the one I studied the most was the Fastest Man on Earth speech that Matt Damon gives. I said, okay, the Fastest Man on Earth speech is one for one basically the opening scene of Never Hike Alone, with him in the truck being like, hey, what's up, you know, trail junkies, Kyle McLeod, blah, blah, blah. He's sort of doing the Fastest Man in space speech right there. And then we just took that formula and applied it to every time he would do a confessional. And it's not that we kept doing the same thing over and over again. It was just that was, that's for consistency. And I think that there were little happy accidents. Like one of my favorite happy accidents in Never Hike Alone, which I think is one of the best shots, is when Kyle's doing the confessional, where he's selling the shovel. And it's a very simple setup where he set it up in the corner of his tent, and he sat back and he's doing his whole thing. That when he turns out the light and he leans forward and turns this into a wide, you know, salesmanship thing, and all of a sudden he turns it into an intimate close-up shot that's creepy. Like, I feel like that was one of my proudest moments of being like, this is interesting. This is great. This isn't a big sweeping shot. This isn't any of those things. This is good, you know, economical storytelling. And I think with those, I love that type of stuff. Like, I would say more than going big and bold. But during my time in animation, I worked with a filmmaker, Jimmy Hayward, who was a big proponent of scope and scale. Creating scope and scale, a big way to make a film feel more expensive is to make things seem grand and expensive when, you know, you're getting it for free. And so shooting out in the forest, we had a big, grand, expensive set. You know what I mean? And with the drone technology, we're able to open it up. And so for me, what I mostly look for are, you know, when people have drones, one thing I notice is that they get too fidgety with the controls. They don't allow themselves to just fly the drone and get long things of footage. They're always changing angles. They're always kind of not giving themselves enough time to let things breathe and sit. And so what we talked about as a team is like smooth, you know, smooth pans, smooth tilts, you know, smooth camera. Like it's got to feel like a helicopter. It can't be herky jerky. It can't feel like it's anything less than it has a weighted camera is flying through the air, because that sense of weight is what gives it cinematic quality. And so a lot of the camera work that we did as far as like the drone work is stuff that feels like it's on a weighted camera that's not being tossed around, that's not there. There are a few moments where our drone drifts a little bit. It does a little droney things, but like for the most part, that was always the goal. And it was a combination of those things. So it was a way to take this small idea, get it in the forest, shoot it in a way that made it feel really, really big. And then once we got into our small, intimate settings, that we just relied on good camera structure, that, you know, we had the right angles, you know, we were always on the right side, or not always on the right side of the line, but we were trying to stay on the right side of the line. And then we see, like, I think one of my favorite things about filmmaking is getting when the camera first goes up, and you can storyboard it however you want, you can write it however you want, but until you actually get the frame up and you can see what is in those lines, what's in the background, what's in the foreground, where is the character placed, that you can really be like, you know what? I think this shot is more interesting if he's standing over here, or if they're standing over there, if we weight it this way. Like a good example of that was in Never Hike in the Snow. I worked with the cinematographer Evan Buck on that, where I said, when I do this interview with the mom and the sheriff, I don't want it to feel like a standard interview, because I watch too many low budget horror movies that sort of set up very boring over the shoulder shots, and it doesn't feel very engaging. I want shot, reverse shot, and I want it weighted differently. I want them weighted at the front of the frame versus the back of the frame. And I think it's going to put them together as they're having this chat. And it's just going to be a little bit more interesting. And there's something unsettling about it. And oddly enough, like, as much as I love everything in Never Hike in the Snow, that I'm so proud of that. Like, if I could say, like, oh, when I do a conversation scene, here's the best version of what I think I can do for this, because I think that this is the most interesting version of a conversation versus like traditional cinematography. I think this makes this more interesting and more cinematic. And so there's things like that. And so that's how sort of my brain works. It's just, I want to give people something that, like, when I go into a film like Nosferatu, like, it was a cinematic experience for me because of the cinematography and some of the shots that he came up with. And I want the cinephiles in the audience to have a few of those moments in my movies where they go, God damn, that's a great shot. And in Never Hike Alone 2, we got it with the dive into the water and him sitting up. Like, that's probably the most frequent comment I got about that. Man, that transition. And that for me is like, it's a camera trick. And I like that. I think that when you can play a little magic trick with the camera, same thing with like the GoPro stuff that we do, there's like little magic tricks in there. It's all fun. And I think that my biggest thing is I want the audience to get some type of experience out of it while they're in the theater or they're at home saying, wow, that's cool. Oh, wow. You want people to have that feeling. And if you can make people feel that, I think that that's a huge victory as a filmmaker.
The interview with Diana Hill and Rick,
Mm-hmm.
I think it feels very intimate, and at the same time, like you're just sitting in the couch and watching they speak with each other, the interaction. And I must say that just by this cinematography, I think is really good, because if you forget like the parts of horror and stuff, you would really enjoy the scenery when the thing was shot, like the first half, like when Mark is being chased. It's like a really beautiful place. It is sort of place I if I move to the US, I should want to live in. Like a really nice woods. Looks like a really calm place for getting killed.
Yeah.
Yeah. And additionally, like the soundtrack for me, and I think for other people that are gonna be watching this, stand out a lot. It's like a huge tribute to the original soundtrack, but I think it goes further from that, because you have like the when Jesus around, like the sound like kiki and stuff, and go beyond that. Like you can talk about how was the creative process for that. If you actually one of your guys was like the main one for the soundtrack.
Yeah, so Ryan Perez Dapple does the soundtracks for all 3 films, and where it came from as far as like the Never Hike Alone sound was I was sort of exploring what I was going to do for soundtrack and temp tracks, and I obviously had some Friday the 13th tracks in there, and when you listen to them more closely, there's a lot of Psycho in there. Like I was studying a lot of different scores, and so I was listening to like, so you could, there's a lot of Bernard Herrmann inspiration into the Friday the 13th soundtrack. So I sort of played this game of Never Hike Alone is this bizarro world Friday the 13th movie, and it's going to be built in a different way, that it wasn't built to be like a boobs and blood slasher, Friday, teen romp comedy type thing. That this was going to be a serious movie about a hiker, and so it was going to have a different tone. So I thought, well, if we're changing that, we should probably change the music just a little bit, but let's stay in that same world. Let's say that Harry Manfredini wasn't inspired by Psycho, but he was inspired by Vertigo instead, which is a more tension-based, slow burn of a movie. And so we took, the Vertigo score. It's like, and if you listen to it, there's like the subtle piano. It's like do 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 bong, and it gets big. And we went, huh. And so we sort of modeled the opening theme to Vertigo. And then I asked Ryan to say, I just went to Ryan and I said, could you sort of come up with something that follows this structure, but make it your own? And he's the one who took it from, Vertigo's strings and all of those different things, and he brought it into more piano, and he brought it into more, other instruments, and created that score where it felt like it was a mixture between the opening of Vertigo and the opening of The Shining. And then once we sort of figured that out, he got sort of the themes of the movie. The kills and Maz became accents. So instead of it just being all over the place, that every kill in Ma is tied to sort of a cut, or it's tied to a movement, or it's tied to a reveal. There's something to there. There's like a balance to it. So they're not just like Harry Manfredini just hit the repeat button and just put them everywhere. Like we have them they're like sniper shots of like, there's a Chig goes there, a Ha goes there, and now another one, and now another one. And so like it's and then those things just go out from their first hit. And that's the way we kind of played them, to sort of just make them more accents rather than full blown like layers upon layers of music that are, or layers and layers of tracks that are just kind of burying the soundtrack. Just
one question. The Jeep that Kyle drives is your Jeep?
No. The Jeep that he was driving in the first movie was my neighbor's Jeep.
Oh.
It was actually a Ford Bronco. It was a 1978 Ford Bronco, and that thing broke all the time. It broke, I want to say 3 or 4 times when we tried to shoot the opening scene. Yeah, it was. That was like one of the banes of our existence, was that although those shots of driving up the mountain took months to shoot because the car kept breaking.
I can say Fords are not known by being reliable.
Yeah.
Oh God, yeah.
What about the reception of your Jason? How did the audience react to your Jason? Especially with the idea of the viewer cheers for the characters that are facing him.
Mm-hmm. I think that like the reception was really cool. We started building a little bit of fan base before the first film released, and then once it released, we found the foundation of our audience. I think people, more than anything, we wanted to give Friday the 13th fans a reason to smile that year, because it had been so many down years in a row. And who would have knows it, you know, continued with, you know, they still haven't made a film, they still haven't made the TV show, but you know, that was sort of the first goal. And I think that like what was rewarding about it was that, you know, everyone showing up for Jason, but everyone left a fan of Kyle. Everyone loved Andrew's performance. And he won people over. He has to, like, the film doesn't work unless Andrew carries that movie for a half hour until things get really, really good. And it's not to say what he's doing isn't good. It's just that he has to be an interesting person that captures our attention. And he did such, because he's so likable. He's so, you know, he did such a good job of just settling into that world and selling everything that he was seeing. He was such a trooper for coming up every weekend and doing all that stuff. So, you know, that was sort of a big part of it. And then, you know, as far as Jason goes, I feel like we got a mostly positive reaction. I think there were some people that felt our Jason was too small, or, you know, a lot of people are like, I'll see a negative comment will be they don't like the jacket, but those are to be expected. I actually expected more people to not like it. Just because that's how Friday the 13th fans are. There's so many different opinions, and my opinion was so vastly different than what we had seen. I thought I was out in like this, you know, very experimental range with the type of movie that I was creating. Even my own self as a fan, I had many years prior would be guilty of saying, I do not want to see a found footage Friday the 13th. Do not do this to me. Don't make the 13th movie a found footage Friday the 13th movie. And the more I fought against that trend, the more ideas came to me about, if they do this, there's only one way they're going to make it good. And that was Never Hike Alone. And instead of, I think for me, trying to go online on, you know, movie forums and chat blogs and all these different things, and having these flame wars with other nerds who were, you know, had their own opinions and had their own ideas for story, and we were all arguing about what the best story was. I got so sick and tired of talking about what the next Friday the 13th movie should be, that I just wanted to go out and show people what I thought it should be and let them judge it for an actual idea versus just some random thing that was on a chat blog. You know what I mean? And I think that that's really where it came. So seeing people, you know, after you've spent a lot of time thinking about something and you have to put it in front of people, like, okay, I think this is better than what most people are giving it credit for, and to see it get the credit that, you know, that we think that it deserves, super rewarding. It was very rewarding to sort of be proven right in a way. And then it was sort of like, that to me felt like an open invitation to keep playing, because if I had already come this far and I had discovered these things, well, wait until you hear about all the other ideas I have about Jason, because they're even better than this. You know what I mean? And I think that has been the fun part, is like it opened up a door for me to be able to explore this fandom that I have for this franchise and tell these stories, because these stories literally live inside of me. I think about, you know, Never Hike Alone 2. I watched that movie in my head for 4 or 5 years before I was able to make it. And I could tell you that, like, I watched that specific movie and more. There's other scenes that I wasn't able to make. There's other things that I wasn't able to make happen. But for the most part, that scene of him being at the end with Jason in the lake and all of that stuff has been there for a long time. And I can't tell you how rewarding it is to get it out of here and get it on the screen and show it to people and watch them react to it and have, honestly, like, I watch these things in my head. Sometimes I feel like I'm not even making it up. I'm just sitting and watching my brain create these like dream-like movie sequences. And I'm just trying to record what it's doing. Like, okay, this is what's going to happen. And I will literally sit here and imagine these scenes, and I will laugh, and I will like be like, I'll cry. Like, there's moments where I thought about things for Diana and her story. Like when she finds her son at the end, like I remember the first time I thought about that scene, I cried. Because I was like, can you imagine what it would feel like as a mother to like pull your son out of the forest after all those months? Holy crap. Like, that's going to be a very emotionally rewarding scene. And I think that that's sort of like what we try to capture and put out there for people. And that's the legacy that we want. I think what I ultimately wanted for Never Hike Alone is I wanted people to love Jason as much as I do, including the people at the top of the food chain who are in charge of his existence, saying like, love it as much as I do, because if you love it as much as I do, you'll get more stuff out, because you won't let any, you know, oh, you got to fill out 10 more documents because this legal thing has to be signed off and this guy has to be paid. You won't care. You'll be like, pay the people, sign the documents, blah, 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 get that thing in the theater. You know what I mean? That's how I would be. I'd be like, figure it out. Like, Like, or I would be at this person's door and be like, how much money is it going to take to get you to release the rights to do this? Can you please take this much money? Because if you release this money, we can make this money and you can make more money. But if you don't do this, you're never going to make money. So what the hell are we doing here? It's like, you know, I think for me, that's just the passion that I have for the franchise. And I want people to, you know, soak that in and have it for themselves.
Yeah, I think my major problem with the modern productions right now, the people that are getting in touch with these big franchises, they never touch it. They don't have like us, don't have the same passion about a project that people that literally grow up watching these things, and you get at a point like you get. I mean, a person that never watched it could make a good production, yes, but is very more likely to fail, to, you know, miss up the whole point of the they say the franchise, than actually succeed on making something better. I know people like you and like Zachary that we did an interview. I hope you guys can change the industry in some way, because, you know, you get like it. You got this trend like you got one good movie for 20 bad ones.
Mm-hmm.
So, yeah.
Yeah, I think the industry's really sort of been taken over by people who don't know story, and I don't even think they know cinema all that well either. I feel like they are professional ladder climbers who find their way into important positions. And once they get there, they don't know what to do other than rely on data. What does the data say? What does the data say we should do? Well, they have no instinct on themselves of what they should tell for a story. And the classic story I always say is, you know, when Walt Disney started, and the Walt Disney Company was out there and they were making those animated films, it wasn't like Walt Disney was sitting in an office and other people were making the movies. Walt Disney was the person who came into the office, looked at the storyboards, looked at the art, and started telling people how to make changes, started telling people how to make it better, how to get it to a certain level. And I feel like those types of people in Hollywood are few and far between. And I feel like a lot of those people who are in more modern, even like the little less modern, like the Quentin Tarantinos of the world, the Steven Spielbergs and all that stuff, I feel like they were less occupied about trying to run an entire studio and just run their own productions. And those types of giants have sort of, you know, they're not making as much anymore. They're not contributing as much anymore. And what you're seeing is a lot of studio producer-based content that is getting pushed forward by groups of people who nobody wants to take, you know, nobody wants to be blamed for the decisions. So that's why they hired the director, but they want to make all the decisions. They want to make sure everything happens on their watch, but when it doesn't go right, it's the director's fault because they gave him everything that he needed, even though they changed 1,000 different things on them. And I don't think that there's enough auteur-centric studios anymore. I would say A24 is, I would say Neon is, and I would say some of those production companies are in the horror world anyway. They allow filmmakers to really run with their ideas. But I feel like in other places, there's just too much interference where you know, creators are trying to get their product onto the screen, and there's too many people who are adding hurdles that don't need to be there when the work itself is hard enough. And I would say that that's why you're seeing a lot of movies that are dumbed down. You're seeing a lot of movies that are just trying too hard because they're just not letting the filmmakers kind of have their day. Or, you know, there's no more content being made. That as well. I mean, there's so many more platforms. There's so many more opportunities for people to see movies in an instant. It doesn't have to go through the theatrical system anymore. It doesn't have to go to TV anymore. It can go to any number of streaming services. So what you're getting is a high influx of content being created, which means that, you know, for all the good stuff that's created, like there's going to be 30 more bad ones because it's really hard to do this. And most people are like, can be okay at it, but really the people who really stand out, there's only few and far between. And I wouldn't even consider myself in the people who stand out and few and far between. I feel like I'm somewhere in the middle of the pack right now where I'm at. Like, it's just a matter of being able to consistently entertain people over and over and over again, and understanding what is entertaining and what is actually engaging for an audience, and what is pandering, and what is sort of, basically, I notice this trend in film from time to time. It's like a certain stunt becomes popular and they use it, and like the first time you see it, it's great, and then they try to use it in every other film. First time you see this is great, and then they try to use it in every other film. And I think we're going to be like, we just see a lot of that because there's a lot of replication, and very few original ideas that get kind of popped around. And then even when original ideas come out, they don't necessarily get the support they usually should, but it looks like The Substance might win a bunch of stuff this year, so that might hopefully help continue that change, along with sort of what happened with Long Legs and that type of stuff, for just letting creative people be creative and just get out of the way. You'll save so much money that way. Like, even if it's a failure, you'll lose less money because you won't spend as much time trying to change something that's going to fail anyway. It's either going to work or it's not. There's no note that a producer, like, that 20 different producers are going to give that's really going to save it. You're really just moving the needle like an inch.
So you said about some emails ago, when we are trying to schedule a meeting with you, you said that you went to a Friday the 13th event.
Mm-hmm.
Did you went there dressed as Jason or as a police officer with that Playboy magazine, or you?
Yeah, no, I went to.
Or you went to
just regular clothing,
network or a market?
Yeah, no. Sometimes I get invited to. Yeah, sometimes I get invited to horror film conventions. Sometimes I do costume appearances as Ghost Jason. I haven't done Deputy Playboy yet, but maybe I'll have to get that costume and do that one. But no, sometimes I do. I think that might have been the one where I was in Colorado, which was a lot of fun. It was on a Friday the 13th. We showed, Never Hike Alone Ghost Cut. We showed Never Hike Alone 2. We showed Friday the 13th Part 6. Tom was there. James Sweet from Jason Rising was there. Amy Steele was there. Adrian King was there. So it was a cool, gathering of real powerhouse Friday the 13th people. And I think for me, it's very humbling because I don't consider myself on that echelon of the people who've been in the actual movies, but they're letting me behind the curtain. So there is something to say about that. And, it's really interesting. And I think the conventions are some of the most fun because I get to meet a lot of the people who back the films. They show up at the conventions. We finally get to say hey. We finally get to shake hands. I get to thank them in person for supporting us. I get to make new fans. I get to meet other filmmakers. I get to meet actors who have done it for a million years. And my favorite thing to do with these things is sit down and start poking and prodding them with a bunch of questions and find out about their career and, things that I can learn, things that can help me in life, things that can help me in what I'm doing, because this is just a tough business. And, the most number one, I say, passed on word of advice is just to keep going. And so when you talk to people and you see how long they've been doing it and they just stuck with it and it's still working out for them, that's sort of the thing that gives you the reassurance that okay, I might not become a millionaire tomorrow, and I may not become a millionaire ever, but you know what? Having a lot of great experiences, meeting a lot of cool people. Like when I got to work on 13 Fanboy and become very friendly with Ron Sloan, and we check in with each other every now and then, working on other projects, got to become friendly with Adam Marcus, going to a convention and getting to meet him. And he's got his documentary coming out pretty soon, which I do interviews for, which is really cool. Mm-hmm. So I'm looking forward to that. And it's, it's just opened up this door for me as a Friday the 13th fan to now be a part of. I live in both worlds, which is kind of cool. Mm. And I just sort of sit back and kind of laugh at it. I just sit there at my table sometimes and I'm just looking around. I'm like, cool. This is kind of cool. I enjoy it. It's a nice feeling. It's a sense of accomplishment for sure.
That's nice. That's nice. That's this is nice.
Yeah. This is nice. I could live like this. You know what I mean? But it's fun, and then you get to hang out, and I think that for a while when I was traveling with some of the conventions, there's a group of friends you hang out with, you get used to seeing all the time. Some of those people end up in my movies, and it's a great way to network and just sort of keep inspired and keep the blood flowing. Yeah,
on the last interview, the two guys responsible for filming, they're saying, "Oh, we met each other working on Starbucks," and. Mm-hmm. and start raising money, working on Starbucks to do our own production and stuff. And so you met people along the way, and some people end up following the same, the same career as you and go along with your project. Some people don't. That's life.
No, it truly is. And like, that's how Never Hike Alone started. Never Hike Alone started because, and like I met Kyle on another person's movie. I met Andrew. He was a PA for me on an animated movie. I met Chris working on someone else's movie. I met JD at Muay Thai. We used to train together. John was Chris's friend. And just through random people and random friends, it's like, and once you start picking up steam, it starts to attract other people because they see something happening and they want to be a part of it. And I would say a lot of the people that have come on, like there's a guy by the name of Kaiden Ritchie, who was a huge Never Hike Alone fan. Like I remember seeing his name every single crowdfund. It was just a name that stuck out. Kaiden Ritchie. It was very easy to remember. And then one day I got an email from him saying, hey, if you ever do anything, I'd love to volunteer. He volunteered. He ended up coming out to set. He worked all of Never Hike Alone 2. He worked on set every single day pretty much, and came with us to Washington and traveled all over the mountains with us, and ended up doing a lot of art department and special effects work. And so it's just sort of cool to see that trajectory, you know what I mean? It just seems like when you do something, you see other people inspired to do it along with you, it keeps you going. It keeps me motivated too, because there are times where I want to give up, and I look over and I see these people that have, supported me from all around the world. I see these people that are showing up and leaving their own lives to come help me on this stuff. And I'm like, I got to keep going. I got to persevere, and I need to suck it up, and I just got to keep moving forward. And that's how basically any film gets done, if you ask me.
That's like your portrayal as Jason. I think it is more like this. When people think of Jason, they think like a giant dude like Shaquille O'Neal, for example. Giant in life and stuff, really big bulky. But for you get like the first movie, the first guy was not that big, and he had like a fucking sack on his head. So it's pretty much like things evolve, and is a supernatural character. He's a ghost. He doesn't need to be big. He doesn't need to be super bulky and stuff, because he's not alive. The thing is, the way you can portray Jason is in two directions. You can go the classic, the unstoppable walking tank, really big, or something more down to earth, more close to someone that actually passed on and is killing, haunting people. So one thing I want to ask, for the action scenes, was you or the second actor that was wearing it, like the heavy stuff, like handling the axe, handling the bow?
Yeah, no, it was a mixture of both of us. Brian definitely did a lot of the heavy lifting when it came to the action stuff, where anyone could get hurt or injured, and then I was in there for a lot of the acting stuff, but I was in there for some of the other things too, which was really fun. And it was good. Anytime I can get in there, like I did a lot of the kills, like I did the head crush, I did the axe chop to Mark's mouth. Alan's like Brian is obviously playing Alan Mabry in Never Hike in the Snow, so I ended up blowing his head off. And then I got to do a lot of the kills in Never Hike Alone 2, but we got to share it, both of us, and we have a lot of fun doing it. But Brian takes the brunt of, like, anytime Jason gets yanked or punched or chopped at, like, that's Brian mostly doing a lot of the fighting stuff, and then I get in there for like more of the moments of like the killing, or if he's walking around or stalking, I do a lot of that work.
How it was like to work with Tom Matthews and Vincent Disanti, because they were great highlight to the movie, these actors.
Yeah, no, I mean, it was obviously a dream come true to like pull them in and get them to work on it. For me, it was like, I don't know, it was like an out of body experience. Like when Tom first originally did his, cameo, and the way that we made it so nobody knew about it until the film released, that was a big thing for me, because I wanted it to be a secret. I wanted people to discover it in the moment and have that elation in the moment, not to read it on some article about like, oh, Tom Matthews just signed on to do a fan film and have people be like, oh, how low is he going to do this and blah, blah, blah. But to experience it in real time and actually see it for what it is and not judge it before it happens, that was just a really cool experience. And working with Tom that night was really great. You know, he got to act in front of his kids, and he said that was the first time he really got to act in front of them in his entire life. So it meant a lot to him. And then, you know, Tom got really excited about it, and he was like, hey, I know Vinny Guastafaro. If we do another one, can he be in it? And I was like, are you kidding me? I was going to come ask you if you knew him, because it makes sense that he become the sheriff because he was the deputy and we could get the rivalry. It would be great. So then I meet Vinny Guastafaro, and turns out he's an acting coach in Van Nuys, California, and he does a class. I end up auditing his class and going to his acting class every week and learning a lot about how to direct actors and just getting to know him as a friend, getting to know his wife, Cindy, who is in Pathosis. She was also in Dylan's New Nightmare, you know, his sons, which Roman was in Never Hike Alone 2, which was really cool. And sort of bring them together and have them act in a movie together. And just to have those experiences of talking about life, listening to him talking about his, you know, years in the theater and working for Michael Mann and all these different people. And, you know, Tom too, about his stories about, you know, being roommates with George Clooney and going to acting class with Brad Pitt and Judy Aronson and, you know, all these different people. And there was just like little crew of them that ran around Hollywood way back in the 80s. And, you know, you just feel like, it feels like Hollywood history. You know what I mean? It feels like a Hollywood history lesson while you're getting to meet these people who were, you know, heroes in your life, and learn about the humanity behind them, about their careers, about the highs and the lows, and, you know, how to make a life in this industry. And then just, you know, now they're just friends. You know what I mean? Like, we're just friends. We get together sometimes. Like, we get to meet up at, like, Tom's coming to my hometown here in Massachusetts and doing a convention pretty soon. I'm a part of that convention, so we get to do a guest together in my hometown. So for me, like, I'm back where I grew up in Massachusetts in New England. And for me, I went away all those years ago as this, you know, people knew who I was from sports and things like that. But, you know, eventually, like, your high school and college stuff kind of wears off. People forget about that stuff. But to go away and come back and have people come around and be like, wait, now I'm a guest at a convention alongside some of these people that I grew up to, like, I mean, if you knew me in high school, all I did was talk about Friday the 13th and Tommy Jarvis and all this stuff. Like, to see me now, kind of like, my brother said it best. He's like, you know, I would have never guessed it, but when you look back, it makes total sense. It makes total sense. So it's kind of a cool, it's a cool thing for me. And so getting to like sort of get to meet them, which was one hurdle, and then get to know them in one hurdle, and now get to spend this time with them. It's just like it's just been this experience that has continued and continued and continued for me, which I'm just super thankful for. And I look forward to working on them. Anytime I'm doing a project, I'm keeping them in mind. You know what I mean? Because I want they're my friends, and I want to keep them busy.
And did any other cast or crew from the original Friday the 13th get to engage with Never Hike?
I mean, Tracy Savage is our newscaster. Every time it cuts to a news segment, that's Tracy Savage from Friday the 13th, Part 3. Let me see who else did some stuff. Larry Zerner was in Never Hike Alone 2. He played the mayor. So Shelley from Part 3. Adam Marcus does voiceover work for us. Ron Sloan does voiceover work for us. Tom McLaughlin does voiceover work for us. Judy Aronson, Lauren Marie Taylor, Debbie Voorhees, Cynthia Kanai does it. I think I got everybody. And so all those people, I mean, I got to work with Adrian King and Amy Steele on Jason Rising. And I got, you know, I worked on 13 Fanboy, so I got to fight Kane Hodder. I got to fight CJ Graham. And I got to meet, you know, I got to meet Carol before she passed away on 13 Fanboy. And some of the other alumni that came through, and you know, I've become friendly with Doug. I mean, obviously Doug Tate has a cameo in Never Hike Alone 2. How could I forget about Doug? You know, I've met Kane, you know, obviously, like, worked with Kane a bunch of times now. Got to meet Derek Mears. I've met Steve Dash. You know, obviously Richard Brooker's passed away. I never got to meet Ted White. But I feel like I've gotten around. I got to meet Joe Zito, which is really cool. So yeah, a lot of stuff like that where, people have helped out, and then a lot of people behind the scenes have come up to me and have said, I love what you're doing with Never Hike Alone too. Like Tom McLaughlin was one of the first people who reached out. Doug Tate was the first person who reached out. The second person was Tom McLaughlin, the director of My Favorite Friday the 13th. So I got to tell you how awesome that felt when I heard from Tommy the first time.
What about the future plans? Your future projects? What do you expect from them?
Yeah, so Mom Swamp Films has relocated back to Massachusetts in the United States. We're building a new team out here to work on projects over the next couple of years. Several short films, a feature film, which are all in the works now, which if people are following on social media or our YouTube, they'll definitely get updates about them every single week as they get closer and closer. We'll be launching crowdfunding campaigns. I have maybe I can get you guys help on this. I have a graphic novel coming out called Ghost Chicken. We're going to do an English version. I have our partners at Mako Animation who are helping us with Ghost in the Fog turn it into Spanish. Maybe we can do a Portuguese version as well, and we can do a print in Portuguese if people do that.
Yes.
So we'll be launching that in a few weeks, in a few months. Never Hike Alone will carry on. We're obviously working on Ghost in the Fog right now. I'm working on the Ghost of Crystal Lake novella. And then once we finish our original projects, I'm going to be partnering with Cortland Gordon, who played Mark Hill in Never Hike in the Snow. Him and I are going to collaborate on Never Hike Alone 3. And we're going to start writing it and start putting it together. And I think in a couple of years, a year or two, once we've kind of finished some original projects, we'll test the waters and see if there's some room for us to get that done. And in the meantime, I would just say any fans of our material should check out our YouTube. We got a bunch of original stuff up there already, a bunch of fan films up there already. I also do a weekly show called The Ghost Files Live. It's not weekly, but it's bi-weekly, tri-weekly, depending on my schedule. But I do updates on all of it, everything that we're doing. And we have some new crowdfunds coming out, so you should definitely keep an eye out for that. There's going to be a crowdfund for Ghost in the Fog. There's going to be a crowdfund for Ghost Chicken. And then after that, there's going to be a crowdfund for some short films, original short films that we're going to try to shoot this fall.
I must say, the franchise have fans all over the world. And besides Brazil, there's any engagement from different countries you're expressing, whoa, I never expected that to be this big here?
Yeah, no, I have it's picked up a pretty good following in Australia. There's a decent following in Japan. There's a decent following in Mexico. I was surprised to be shipping Blu-rays and stuff to Kuwait. There's been stuff to small, there's a couple of places in Africa, all over Europe. But yeah, I would say Chile and Brazil are the two biggest proponents in South America, which is really, really cool. So we're very excited to have a presence, and I'm very excited to know that the Friday the 13th franchise in general in South America is so huge, and you guys love Jason down there. So that was really cool to see that we share this. We're how many thousands of miles apart, but we share this love for the franchise, and I think it's cool that it's so popular down there. It makes me want to come down and just hang out with a bunch of Friday fans. Speaking
of Brazil right now, how besides you, how the team reacted to the dubbing, or
everybody who's seen it has been blown away.
That watches some of the original actors watch it or something.
Oh, they love it. Everybody just gets a kick out of it. It's they can't, we didn't expect it. You know what I mean? It's a fan. Most people don't even watch fan films. We're getting a Brazilian Portuguese dub. So it's a tip of the cap for us. And I think it's a sign of all the hard work that we did, because it's resonated with you. And everyone's just proud of the work. I think I just got to tip my hat off to your voice actor who does Rick Colon. He brings it. It's a completely different performance. It's so serious, and I'm like, oh my god, this is so good. Wow.
Yeah. I must say that is our director. That's Lucas.
Oh, is it? Oh, he's great.
Yeah, he's our man with 1,000 voices. He can do almost.
He's got that deep gravel. I was like, oh wow.
He do all the old mans.
Yeah, no, it's great. It's great. I love it.
Yeah. Unfortunately, he does not speak English. Not very well. If he did, he could probably be here. But he gonna hear about that and be sure he gonna Actually, I appreciate that a lot.
Mm.
As far as you go now in your career, 17 years on the making. For anyone out there, for a young man, they're trying to be a filmmaker. What do you want to say for them?
I think it's tough. There's a lot of different pieces of advice you can give someone. I kind of gave one before, which was, don't give up. This is a very hard industry. You should expect it to be very hard. There will be moments that will crush your soul. It's going to be very hard to get up after that. But as long as you keep getting back up, you will be rewarded again with different experiences that make it worthwhile. And I think the sum of the whole of the experience of becoming a filmmaker is definitely worth it because of the types of adventures and types of experiences that you're going to have that you can only have through filmmaking. For someone who wants to come up and who wants to do it and do it well, do the work. And don't put so much pressure on yourself to do things fast. Do things right. Don't write a script in a weekend and try to go make it. Like, you can try that, and you'll see right away why it may present other issues that will come for you. I always try to tell people, like, it's okay to slow down. Like, break the process down, figure out what you need to do to get the next thing done, and do it one thing at a time. And eventually, doing one thing at a time turns into a bucket of things that have been done. And when that bucket is full, you can go make a movie. And it is much more of a rewarding experience to go and make a movie with a full bucket than it is to try to fill the bucket while you're making it. And now, it's not guaranteed success, because I made Never Hike Alone as I was filling the bucket. Like, I was definitely pulling resources as I was going. I was figuring out things as I was going. I wouldn't recommend that that's the best way to do it, but everything was inspired in the moment, and we created a great film. And the films that came after it were definitely were way more polished, were way more well thought out. And they've had, similar results, mixed results, things like that. It's not ever a guarantee, but I can say that the experience of making it is what sort of gets better. The fact that you feel like you have the questions to the answers that are people that are out there, that you can anticipate what is happening versus reacting to everything. And I think that anyone who's getting into the industry that wants to be a film worker, like, I'm a film worker as well. I work on sets, I work as an AD, I work on the art department. The thing that separates somebody who's just starting to who's been doing it for a long time is reaction and anticipation. If you can anticipate what is coming next, you can get ahead of those tasks and you can make your life a lot easier. Or everything you're doing is a reaction, so you're losing time, you're acting in panic, you're trying to rush, and that's where things go wrong. And so when you can anticipate, you have a little bit more fun on set, and it's a little bit more professional. And it's not easy to get there because you can't anticipate unless you've done it for a long time. So you're going to spend a lot of time reacting. But the way you shave that down is by listening and watching. And so if you listen to your peers and you listen to your bosses and you watch how people operate and how they interact with each other, you can learn a lot and you can grow very quickly. And then once you sort of get that confidence and you're able to do that, that will change your career. And from there, it will become a different experience altogether. But all in all, do it because you love it. Don't do it because you want to make money. Because you'll make some money and you'll be able to pay your bills, but like, there's no guaranteed success to making a million. Not everyone who works in Hollywood makes millions of dollars. I don't make millions of dollars, but my work has reached people all around the world, and it's a rewarding feeling. And it's nice getting up knowing that just no matter what project I'm working on, no matter what I'm doing, that, I'll always have this little company and I'll be able to go out with my friends and make these movies, and I have something to look forward to. And as long as I can think of stories, I'm going to keep doing it. And then when someone finds that same passion, that the best thing to do is just find the people you love making movies with and hang on to them tight.
Yeah, like a guy had seen some saying from my friends, is slow is move, is moves is fast. And Zardos, that's one for you. Our boy Zardos over here that is recording, he's studying for cinema.
He's studying cinema at college.
Oh,
Yeah.
cool.
Yeah.
And that's such a great place to sort of meet people, and it's a great place to experiment. You know what I mean? Like, you have access to the equipment, you got access to the editing bays. Not that anything is really, like, when I went to school, you didn't really have access to those things. You had to go to school to get access. Now we can go out and shoot things with our phones and cut things with our phones and cut things on laptops and do all that stuff. It's much easier now. back in my day, it was like you literally had to like record the tape you had to, I can't remember what the process was called, but you had to like literally burn the entire tape and wait for it. It would take hours. And then I think it was called decoding or something like that, or whatever, or transcoding. It was transcoding. And man, that took forever.
Yeah,
and, you know what I mean? You can't just like do it like you can now, but you know, it's all about just experimenting and find things that you like to do and learning little tricks and looking up tutorials, and you know, eventually you just figure out what your taste is, and you go out there and you try to sell it to the people of the world.
Yeah. Like the whole thing for dubbing, like the technology evolved as well. For like you just say, all the old times, the people actually started the whole dubbing industry in Brazil. You had a tape, and you need to record all the tape, and you have to have all the actors in the same time on the studio. So if someone mess up, everyone had to start from right down at the beginning and all over again. So it was a really, really slow and needy process. And now it's simple. We're doing this stuff from home. Unfortunately, we could not get the original actors for the voice actors for Rick and Jarvis for do the voice work, but I guess the crew that did an amazing job. I think I could change nothing on that selection.
Oh. No, that's, I mean, everything sounded great to me, so I wouldn't worry about it at all.
Yeah.
And the last question, Vincent, is there any message that you hoped to pass through your films that you were unsure if it was clear enough, and you wanted to speak to us, who is watching right now?
I mean, I do feel like people got most of the message. I would say for the people who are sort of just discovering Friday the 13th or just discovering Never Hike Alone, I would say a lot of people skip over Never Hike in the Snow, and they miss such a big part of the story with Diana Hill's backstory and what happened to Mark Hill and why she's suffering in Never Hike Alone 2. So I would say if you're going to go back and watch the series, or if you recommend it to somebody, make sure that they don't skip Never Hike in the Snow, and that they understand that it's a prequel. I think that got lost somewhere between, we did the original film, and then we were going to do the series, which was going to be Never Hike in the Snow, Never Hike Again, Jason Takes Crystal Lake, and The Final Hike. And when COVID happened and stopped us in our tracks, Never Hike Again, Jason Takes Crystal Lake, and The Final Hike became Never Hike Alone 2, which they originally were in the beginning. That was one big movie that I split up into 3 movies and then added a snow prequel for fun. I feel like COVID really torpedoed us in our ability to sort of convey the message that we were shifting tone because of everything of waiting and all that stuff. But hopefully down the line, as we release the final cut and people watch the new version of the Ghost cut with like everything cut in the middle, that cut in an anthology fashion, that they will that they'll be okay and then figure it out from there, or that they'll finally figure out like how it all kind of connects. And I think that if people go back and they watch the Ghost cut, the recent one that we released in December, that they will get the complete version of that portion of the Never Hike Alone timeline and how it relates to everything else.
As I can say like this, when we start production, when you first answer us, I had a talk with Lucas, our director, was like this. Okay, there is 2 films that are released right now. There's Never Hike Alone and Never Hike in the Snow. We watched both, and we came together and say, okay, looks, besides like Never Hike Alone, like coming first, timeline wise, it came later, and it was like, okay, which one we gonna release first? And we're like, okay, we're gonna go for the Never Hike Alone in the Snow first, because actually gonna set up a tone for when we release the other ones. Besides being, you know, we choose for the timeline release rather than the release date and stuff. It paid off because we got so much attention for it. The people actually, I must say, the Brazilians that watch it got like a really good taste of it, because it's different. you don't see that much of detail. That you don't see the fan productions like that to go this deep, like on an emotional level, like that cinematography, like that. You actually have the original Tom Jarvis and the original Rick Colon on it, and it stand out a lot for that. And I must say, dude, thank you.
No, thank you for watching. Thank you for helping spread the word. Yeah, I mean, I'm just thankful for everybody who supported the series over the years, because we couldn't have done this without our backers. And they allowed me to live sort of like a dream come true and create a story that I've always wanted to see come to fruition. And I'm just happy to see so many fans celebrating Friday the 13th, having something to cheer about, having something to talk about, having something to debate about, and actually kind of chat. I think it's just that's what we want. We want our fan bases, Friday the 13th fans, to have life to it. And you can only discuss the original 12 films and the ranking and the order and why we love them so many times. We need new stuff. And so fan films have sort of filled that void. I know there are a lot of fans that are still resistant to it. So I hope that, if I can compound off the last question, is that, like, I hope those people that have been holding out all this time, who swear that they will never give fan films a chance, finally give our films a chance and other films a chance. And maybe they might see things that they've always wanted to see, and didn't realize that it was there the whole time.
Yeah, the industry, I think, as a whole, needs to realize, okay, these guys are doing this because they love the source material. They want more of it. If they want more of it, we should, give them a chance to actually show the world that these franchises can evolve and change and be something better overall. Mm-hmm. And I think the work you've been done to the whole Never Hike Alone, Never Hike Alone 2, in the future project is amazing. And as far as we are right now, the relationship between the Quartel Convite and the Womp Swamp Films, any future projects, you can count us in, because we enjoy working with you guys. We enjoy the mutual respect between us and you guys. And
same.
Yeah.
So yeah, well, anytime we make anything, let's chat, and we'll make sure that we can expound our fan base and work together on that stuff.
Yeah, that's gonna be amazing, because it's been a hell of a ride so far, and I cannot thank you enough for taking us serious, because people think, oh no, they're just an internet studio. I'm probably not doing something serious enough. But be sure of that. Every penny we invest on these kind of things, it goes not just for, we're just there for show up. No, we love the kind of stuff we're putting out there. We love to, as much as we're a freelancer studio, we're like an indie studio, we like to support a studio like you and other ones that are being worked with us, because we want more people to reach you guys, because not everyone speak English on this world, unfortunately. There is a small percentage of people that actually speak English. So I think dubbing is a way to reach further and reach more people that enjoy it and like it.
I agree. I know, and I think that's what really helps, because it's not my forte at all. I was not great at languages in school, so having help, not just in the dubs, but also with the translations as well, has always been a big thing for me. It's like being able to put the subtitles up there, even for people who have a hearing impairment. Like, there is, it's nice to know that, like, right now there's not a lot keeping people from enjoying Never Hike Alone. They can put on subtitles in almost a dozen languages, and it's just cool. But it's like, a lot of the cool part about that is not just like us sitting down and running our stuff through AI and kind of doing stuff. These are people who have come out of the woodwork from these countries being like, I want more people in my country to see this. I will help you do the dub. I do the English dub, send it over, not the dub, but if I do the English translations and I send it over to them, or the subtitles, and I send it over to them, and they translate it and they send it back, and I plug it in and I do the work to make sure it all lines up. That's a lot of work just to make sure that hopefully more people can enjoy it. And I think that that's sort of that's what I like about the just the attitude and sort of the drive of what we're doing, is that we're just trying to get more people involved with Friday the 13th, and that's the ultimate goal.
I must say, it's hard work on both parts, because it's hard work for you to get the investment and the fans. One thing that we want to point out, the fans being involved is a really big thing, because I think here people do not realize that for some projects you actually need a lot help from people that actually love it to make it go forward. And just like, oh, I want to watch this and this, but you realize there's different perspective. There's people like, oh, I really enjoyed this, I want to be part of it, so in the future I can see more of it. It's been like the whole thing with the Womb Swamp. We have like 2 short films and 1 feature film right now. So see how the links, everything got it. Like it started with 1 project, and it's getting a lot more things going on, and there's more things that are gonna be released, more things you're working on. I think there's a good way to live a life, if you know what I mean.
Oh yeah, no, it is really cool to know that we've built up a fan base that when we want to do something, we can turn to them and they will help make it happen. And I think that is, as far as a filmmaker goes, to have that type of support is invaluable. So it's something I'm super appreciative of, and I'm looking forward to welcoming people into that fold as we make more and more content, and hopefully the community keeps getting bigger and bigger.
You have one message for Brazil before we wrap it up?
Thank you for supporting Friday the 13th. Thank you for supporting Never Hike Alone, and hopefully one day I'll be able to come down and experience it for myself.
Nathan, you want to say something before we?
It was an honor to meet you, Vincent. Thank you for your time and your fast answers. You're the fastest guy answering emails regarding my experience. Just
I'm
instant answers.
I appreciate that. No, I'm pretty. I don't have any problem having conversations with people. That's for sure. But no, it's been a pleasure, guys. I really enjoy hanging out with you, and I always look forward. When I see Cortell in the inbox, I'm like, ooh, what's going on? I'm like checking in with you guys, seeing what's up. It's cool to have some pen pals from across the globe. So thank you for the support over the years, and anytime you guys want to chat, I'm down to have a conversation.
I want to say it's been a pleasure, because I've been working with your material for a long time, almost turning 4 years working with the Friday and Womb Swamp material, and I must say I watch it a lot, and I think I feel part of it now, because
well, you are, yeah. And once you work on it, you're a part of it, and so it's like the web never ends.
Yeah. Again, thank you very much, and we see each other soon again.
Yep. See you guys soon. It was great talking to you today.
Same.
Thank you very much. Bye.
Thank you, man.
All right. Bye, guys.